This is the We Built This Business podcast. Today, we're running our how-to mini-series where we speak with a business owner who is an expert in a particular area so that we can learn and do a deep dive and find out more information to help our own businesses. This is the We Built This Business podcast. Today, we're running our how-to mini-series where we speak with a business owner who is an expert in a particular area so that we can learn and do a deep dive and find out more information to help our own businesses. I'm pleased to have Faris Aranki on the We Built This Business podcast. Faris is the Managing Director of Shiageto Consulting. Today, as part of our How-To mini-series, we'll be talking about how to train teams and individuals to be more strategically successful. Faris, welcome to the podcast.
Daniel, so great to be with you and the listeners, viewers today. Really looking forward to our conversation.
Thanks, Faris. Really interested to learn more about what Shiageto Consulting is and how they can help teams and individuals. So if I could just start by asking, can you tell me a little bit more about yourself and also Shiageto Consulting?
Yeah, well, Shiageto is I'm going to start off with what does Shiageto mean? It's the Japanese word for a sharpening stone. So as human beings, as teams, as companies, we all go a bit dull, like a knife sometimes, and we need a bit of sharpening. That's where Shiageto comes in. And it is the culmination of all my experiences as a strategy consultant. So I spent 12 years prior to setting up Shiageto as a strategy consultant, working for big strat firms. Before that, I worked in industry. So I worked for a large global utility in their strategy team. I actually started on the shop floor there, answering telephones. Wow. And before that, my first career was as a secondary school teacher. So I used to teach maths and economics around the world. And really what I learned through all those principles is anything to do with strategy, anything to do with success is have a great idea, make sure you take others on the journey with you, and then be focused to deliver it. Okay, and those are the three fundamental pillars of Shiageto. It is the IQ, the idea, it is the EQ, the ability to take others with you, and it is the SQ, which many people wouldn't have heard of, focus quotient, the ability to focus on what is important that you need to deliver. And without those three components, I have seen time and time again people fall by the wayside, companies, teams. And so that's where we go in and make things sharper.
Fantastic. How did you come to the realization that it was those three things that could really help teams and individuals?
Yeah, I think what really consolidated it for me was my sort of all my time in strategy consulting. Now I've worked at the likes of McKinsey, Carney, those sort of companies people may have heard of. And what we were in to do when we're in those companies, and we were hired by some of the biggest corporations in the world, was to develop their strategies for them. Okay, so lots of IQ. And what we would do is we'd do these very intense projects, we'd come up with a perfect answer, and then we'd hand it over to them. And 9 times out of 10, in my experience, they would do nothing with it. Okay, and I became fascinated by this. I was like, we've literally given them the best IQ answer ever. Why are they not doing anything with it? And then stepping back, you realize that the team you handed it to either were dysfunctional, or they didn't get it, or they were too busy, right? So it was really, we never took into account that sort of the emotional journey of a strategy for those people we were giving it to. We would just kind of drop it. Yes, we'd do a nice presentation, and no wonder they didn't buy into it. And it really took me back to my teaching days of the kids who would sit in front of me and tell me, I hate maths, right? And the only way to overcome that is, look, you have to learn maths, right? It's part of what you have to do. The only way to overcome that was get them emotionally invested, overcome those barriers, those narratives in their head, make it fun, make it simple. So really leaving that EQ piece out, and that really hit home for me. And I was very good at that, to the point that in the business, I was being flown around the world to just do the EQ side of things. Can you go in and get this team working better together? Can you get this team to be more excited by this idea? But I realized that still wasn't enough. And that's where, for years I was itching, what's this missing component? And that's where I discovered this focus quotient. Actually, I realized nobody had ever sort of consolidated around this. So I actually ended up trademarking it. And, that ability, what made the ruthless difference for companies was that single focus, right? Not having 100 things going on at once, but having 1 or 2 things, right? Really saying, this is the most important thing we need to work on right now. Let's clear the path to success for this. And so that's where this final pillar of FQ, and it made this sort of, it's actually a tripod. It's not a 2-legged thing. It's got to have 3 legs. And that's why so many strategies are wonky.
I can see how it's all kind of come together and being very entrepreneurial minded, I've got about 6 or 7 things that at the moment I'm currently working on. And I must admit, sometimes I just find that the focus just completely evaporates sometimes, and I can't seem to nail down exactly what I should be doing day to day because that strategy isn't kind of refined enough. I wanted to go to the question that we're going to talk about today and just kind of break it down into 2 parts. So the first one is how to train teams and individuals. So how, as like a startup or a small business of, around 50 employees, how would you go in there and how would you train their teams and individuals to be more strategic?
Well, I mean, linking back to our previous conversation, it's got to be a priority, right? If it's just a side of desk or, oh, yeah, we just need to do this, it's not going to take off, right? Because it needs people invested. Now, so that's a starting point. And something I always say to companies, if we're going to get involved, is this one of your top 3 priorities? If not, don't do it, right? Save yourselves and us. We'll happily take your money, but, I'm giving you some advice. Don't do it because it will peter out. We need that support from the person at the top. We need everyone going, right, this is what we need to do. Then the second reality is look across those pillars, right? If take any team, first of all, we've got to be really clear what it is we need to train them in, right? So that IQ pillar, really take time to work out. Don't just tell me I want a better team, right? It always makes me laugh when someone senior brings us in and says, can you just make them better? I say, but what specifically? Is it their ability to build relationships? Is it their ability to communicate, give feedback? Let's really drill down, because otherwise we could miss the mark. We could just take too much time. So let's be specific what we want to work on and where we want to get to, right? It's the famous really define your problem, the Albert Einstein quote. If I only had an hour to save the world, I'd spend at least 55 minutes working out what the problem is. So let's start with that pillar. Let's work out, and then what the best options. Know your team. How do they like to learn? How do they like to change? Is it through doing? Is it through academia? Is it through, I would always recommend a blend, because you've got a range of people in that team. So then what we hinge all our sort of training and activity is make it very interactive, right? Make it less talking, more doing, right? Active learning is about applying what you're learning. So you come to any of our sort of sessions, it'll only be 10-15% theory. We save 70-80% to actually people doing and getting live feedback, right? And not just from the expert in the room, but from their peers. People learn from their peers. They're held accountable by their peers. I could walk into a room and say, and people would go, yeah, but Faris, you've got 20 years of experience doing this. Yeah, but John, who sat next to me, I should, he's the same level as me. So if I see him and he can do it really well, then, it's great to get his feedback. So we do peer feedback. I work with a lot of difficult characters. So sometimes we need to bruise a few egos as well. That's what gets people to actually pay attention. But it is about making it simple. It is about making it fun. Often people don't realize they're learning or being trained. Right? And then you support it by being focused on it. And it's that prioritization point.
Okay. The bruising of egos, how would you, because I imagine, like you said earlier, with dysfunctional teams, how do you go about bruising egos, yet still getting people to come along with you on that journey?
You've got to do it delicately. Depends on the personality type. Sometimes you can bruise their ego against themselves, right? So I've recently been working with a CEO who is a very dominant character, but he was completely unaware of this. So after running a session for him and his team, and which we happened to be recording, because some of the team members were remote, so we recorded. I said to him, the discussion about how much he dictated the meeting. I said to him, how much do you think you spoke during that meeting versus the rest of your team? And he said, well, Faris, I probably spoke 10% of the time, 15% of the time. I said, well, the good thing is we've got AI now. I can give you exactly the percentage that you spoke, right? And he was flabbergasted when I said, you spoke for 72% of the meeting, right? It's literally rocked his world, because he had this one perception of himself, and there I've gone and blown away his perception of himself by bruising his ego, as I call it. Yeah. And he really sat, and he just, it took him 2 weeks to process and come back to me and say, okay, if that's the situation, I cannot debate it anymore. What do I do about it? Right? How do I? So that's one way. The other way, sometimes it's bruising their ego a little bit publicly. I run this regular training course about influencing skills. And one of the first activities we do of the day, before we've taught any theories, said, look, we're just going to do a quick 2-minute role play. You're going to have to pretend you're in a very challenging situation. You need to achieve something. The way we set it up is it's very hard to achieve that. But pretty much, I've run this tens of thousands of times. Leaders leap up, give it a go, and then are embarrassed, frustrated when they can't do it. And they have to do it in front of their peers. And I've seen some terrible reactions to that. But also, by doing that and showing them straight away they're not as good as they think, many of them sit up and listen for the rest of the day, whereas they might have been on their phone scrolling. Either because they want to prove me wrong, or because they actually, I've got something to learn here, right? I'm not as good as I thought I was. So it's that gentle bruising, and you've got to know your audience, have a bit of trust to be able to do that, right? And I'm not talking about bullying. I'm not talking about, humiliating in front. It's just that gentle, maybe there is something you could learn here. So, give it a bit more of your focus.
So it's almost that ego taming as well, isn't it? As in the person at the top, in this scenario, she said, has probably been used to always being the one that speaks at the meetings, always been the one that makes the decisions. And it's almost takes someone from outside of the organisation to be able to come in and say, look, this is what's happening in the team, and this is making it dysfunctional. Now, just diving back into dysfunctional, what, in your opinion, is a dysfunctional team?
For me, teams that I see that aren't working as well as they could be are ones who don't take the time to ask enough questions, listen to each other, and involve the whole team. So there are mini silos up. There's a hint of arrogance of, I already know the answer, an unwillingness to explore, or they're not, they're sort of not including every member of the team, right? A boss may have his 2 or 3 favorites, but there's 12 people in the team, right? Doesn't mean those 2 or 3 are going to have the best ideas on every topic. So almost it just becomes this de facto position where the meetings are almost identical. They're asking the same people over and over and excluding, ostracizing people, not intentionally, but it's just built up to that. So it's little things. That's why we talk about effectiveness. Open up the team, you'll get a range of ideas. And people say, well, that'll take more time. Not if you facilitate, not if you set up the structure to a meeting to be more effective. Most meetings, I'm going to be really controversial, 95% of meetings are utter tosh. They are badly run. They achieve nothing, apart from fill time. All right. So it's very easy. Time is not the problem. It's how you run these things. So that for me is the common things that I see. Now, obviously, at the far end of the stream, there's some toxic behaviors, right? And that's a different set of things you need to deal with. But you take any team out there, they could be working a little bit better by just listening more, asking more questions, and including more of the team in how they go about doing their work.
I'm just thinking from my point of view, who would, for example, come to you and say, look, our team's dysfunctional? Would it, or not necessarily our team's dysfunctional, but we need, like more purpose towards one goal and work better as a team? Would it be necessarily the CEO, or would it be someone else traditionally that works with them that identifies that problem?
So in the small businesses, it is someone on the leadership team. In the bigger businesses that we work with, and just for context, we do work with people the likes of Amazon, Heineken, and Marks and Spencer's. It's usually someone who runs a team, right? A business unit leader, an operations. But here's the thing, Daniel. Nobody very rarely comes to us and says, I have a team that's not working. Far more likely, the start of the conversation is, we haven't hit our sales targets this year, right? Customer satisfaction is down. It is, as much as I'd love to just only come in to fix the dynamics, because I'm a strategy guy, I'm brought in to solve a company strategic problem, right? People are much more willing to pay money to solve those than get the team feeling a bit better. So that is the in. It just so happens that the way we go about fixing it is through the people, 9 times out of 10. And I'll give you a great example. We've been working with a consumer goods company recently that have a giant warehousing problem. And the cost of their warehousing has just been going up and up and up year on year. And they tried an IT solution. They tried a process solution. And then when I heard about it, I was just chatting over a coffee to the guy who was in charge of supply chain. I said, explain the process. And I said, do you know what? It sounds like a people problem. And what it turned out to be was 2 departments were not talking to each other, right? So there's this miscommunication, and it just been left to compound over the years, right? So one team saying, look, we need to make this much product. The other team saying, no, we need to make this much product. And the second team were more aggressive. So I said, if you just fix how those 2 teams work together, you'll evaporate your problem. Give me 3 months. And that's what we did. We just trained the teams to work better, partly just blended them together. And it got rid of that problem, just better communication. but it was so obvious that people were not even looking at it. They were saying it must be something to do with our, this IT system, this integrated. Let's go and fix that. I'd love to say people, and they're aware of what the problem is, and say, come in and fix the team. That will solve this other problem. But it's usually the other way around.
It's very interesting. How did you, once you've identified the problem that was a people problem, how did you then tackle getting those two teams to work together?
So something we do in a lot of companies is just expose people to each other more, right? There was a great experiment. Have you heard of randomized taxi allocations, right? So they did this great experiment where they took a company and from the company away day, they did randomized taxis. So they said, okay, you four have got to share a taxi back to the train station, right? And then next one is you four. And here's the thing, the taxis weren't randomized. They purposely put in people from different departments. And because what they wanted to see, and they had a control group of they wanted to see how those people operated over the next 6 months. And the people who'd shared a taxi for no more than 20 minutes, they found they were better communicating. They were more likely to talk to each other in the company. Their projects were likely to go better just because they had that small element of greater connection. So I am forever going to companies going, right, let's find ways to get these groups of humans talking more to each other. Break down barriers. It could be a random coffee generator. It could be, let's just have day in the life of, right, where you go and shadow someone for a couple of hours, see what their world is about, right? Let's have people share at the start of a meeting something personal in a fun game. I do lots of little games with teams. Just little micro things that will break down those barriers between them so they're more likely to have a conversation, because when two human beings find something they have in common, they will work better together. Right. But most of us don't go around looking for that because we're too busy head down, task focused. So actually taking that time to just say, do you know what? You like that team, right? Yeah. And I literally, here's one of my most favorite activities is at the start of a meeting, it takes a couple of minutes, say, put people in pairs, say, right, you've got 2 minutes to find the most interesting fun fact that connects the two of you. The pair that comes up with the best wins a little prize. Right. And I do this even in board meetings. And the stuff that comes out in 2 minutes, because people are super competitive, they're like, we want to beat the other teams. People suddenly find that they've got this hidden hobby together. They both love the same artist and they went to see them in the same stadium, right? That they've both been to the same place on holiday. And do you know what? The rest of the meeting, the dynamic just changes. So it doesn't have to be big stuff.
It's the experience, isn't it? I mean, one of our brands is called Team Building Experiences, and we get people together to do shared experiences. And it's those unique moments where, for example, I ran a sports day event on Thursday, and one of the requirements was that each person in the team was from a different department. So at the beginning of the event, they were barely talking to each other. It was quite kind of quiet. By the end, it was almost raucous. Everyone was chanting, enjoying themselves, cheering each other on. Everyone knew each other's names. They all left and they went to the bar on the site, and the CEO came over and she was like, everybody's talking. This doesn't normally happen. Usually everyone just stays in their departments and they just almost segment into different areas and then they just go off. And I think that's the thing, is that shared experience that allows them to have that communication that enables them to break down barriers.
100%.
The strategically successful part.
Yeah.
So to you, what is strategic success?
So it is linking back to something we said earlier. You can only be strategically successful if you have a clear objective, right? If I just say, I want to be a better person, great, but what does that really mean, right? Have a clear goal. And that's, I go back to that Albert Einstein quote, spend a lot of time at the front. What do I want to achieve, all right? It's amazing. People assume others know. I once worked with a small company. They had 4 founding directors. And I looked at their vision, and the vision said on their website, we want to be the number 1 engineering company to help, on sustainability and groundbreaking projects. I then looked at the projects they were doing. None of them ever fitted under that bill. They were just a random project here, a random project there. So I got the people together, the 4 directors, and I said, something's wrong here for me. Either your vision is off or you're just terrible at selling the kind of projects you want to sell. Which is it? Right? And they all looked sheepishly, and actually there was silence in the room for 2-3 minutes. And one of them just said, I've never believed in that vision. I just want to make money. Right. And the next person said, I just want to retire by the time I'm 50. Right. And they went around this room and they were all like, clear, they didn't buy into the vision. They just put it up as something they felt they had to. And I said, okay, maybe not on your website say I want to retire by the time I'm 50, but don't be dishonest to yourselves, because you've got a team of 40 now, right? And they will think that's the vision there, and all your customers think there's vision. So we're not going to leave the room until you guys have a clear vision, right? Until you're all bought into it, because that is, you need that North Star, you need that clarity to be successful. Otherwise, you'll all do your own thing, and then you'll come back together and get frustrated going, why didn't we achieve this? Why didn't we achieve that? So you've got to have a clear thing. That's the strategic success, right? And then strategy is simple. If I know where I want to get to, the next step is come up with all the options to get me there. Not just one option, not just two. That's where a lot of companies go wrong, is come up with two options and then pick the best of the two. And usually, by the way, those two options are things they've already done in the past. But if you can come up with 100 options, no matter how wacky, pick the top ones, right? Even if they don't work, you've still got 98 other strategies, right? So that's the thing. Pick the best one and then go all in on it, right? So that's what strategic success is, right? Have a clear vision, pick your best option, do it to the best of your intention. And you'll be surprised, and test and learn along the way. If it's not working, switch out for one of those other strategies. But don't change your North Star. And it's amazing, just follow that process, how successful you can be. But equally, on the other side, it's amazing how many people fail to know where they're aiming for or don't quite get there because their first strategy doesn't work and they just give up.
I wanted to, because you said about the changing of the, along the way and the journey and that sort of side of things, talk about innovation. So the process of, by getting people talking more, how have you found innovation assists that success?
Innovation works, it assists immensely, right? And it depends what you mean by innovation. I'm not going to get into technical conversation, but go back to that 100 ideas thing, right? Usually, when I work with most groups, they tell me, well, we don't have any new ideas. That's why they lay out the old ideas and say, well, let's just do this again. New ideas can come from anywhere. And I often with teams show them a technique, how we can generate. If I have 10 people in front of me, I said, we will be able to generate 50 unique ideas in a minute, right? I'm not just saying that to be bullshit. I'm going to show you a technique that does that, all right? And that is by harnessing the power of the team, right? Too many people are just too siloed and they don't look around for other people's ideas. But here's the thing. If you hear another person's idea, you will build upon it, even if it's a terrible idea. All right. So say someone says, let's make shoes out of chocolate from now on. You'll go, well, that's a terrible idea. But hang on a minute. What would be a slightly better idea than that is, if we froze all our shoes, all the chocolate and then made the shoes, that would make it right. Yeah. Okay. That's still a terrible idea, but a better version of that idea is this, right? And that's how ideas are made. Nobody came up with the television or rocket ship on the first idea. They were building small incremental, and people forget. So that's why you need to get all the ideas out of a team. And a lot of that rests upon a leader. Whoever's getting the ideas out of the team, the worst thing you can do in the world is when somebody says a not so great ideas, go, no, that won't work. That's terrible. No, go, that's amazing. Put it on the board with all the other ideas. Go, brilliant, right? Because that's going to help us. Even if that doesn't make it through, it will stimulate something in somebody else's head to get the next level, right? So that for me is what innovation is. It's not rely on your R&D team to come up with some amazing idea. Is put everything out on the table, have people build on each other, create a positive feedback loop, and you'll be amazed in the space of half an hour where you get to from a blank piece of paper.
So we've got in our office an innovation board. So it's a big whiteboard, and we have speech bubbles for people to write ideas, essentially to bring to an innovation meeting that we have once a month. Now, as I've walked up the stairs to come up here, there's about 7 ideas on there. All the other speech bubbles have nothing on at the moment, and those 7 ideas are all from me.
Okay.
So when we have the innovation meeting, which is likely to be the end of this week, we're going to sit down and we'll go around the room and say, has anyone got anything they want to bring to the table? And everybody looks at their shoes. How do we get around that?
I love that. I'm just picturing everybody looking at their chocolate shoes, by the way, not just shoes. The thing is it hasn't become a priority. What it sounds like is it's only a priority for you, right? So nobody is invested, right? It's that lack of EQ. It's that lack of FQ for me, So if this is important, treat it as though it's important, right? Don't just say, build it up, work out how to get these people excited. Is it by turning it into a game? Like, who can come up with the most ideas will win half day, right? The best idea is going to get you put on our website, right? Whatever. Or is it about, hey, look, everyone else has come up with one idea and you haven't, you're letting the team down, a bit of a canter. Make it more important, make it more, right? Literally block off, instead of saying, look, you should do it throughout your day, now go, this is such an important task, we're going to block off the next hour. And don't worry, if you've got no ideas now, trust me, you're going to, right? Because I'm going to take you through a process, right? And it is to giving that encouragement, right? And it is, you can facilitate in an hour and you can say, use my 7 ideas as a jumping off point, right? Either positively go, oh, that's a good idea. Or do you know what? Here's fun. I'm so open. I'm willing to put my 7 ideas and I want you to, we're going to spend 5 minutes. You're going to tear them apart and tell me why they're terrible. And do you know what? That negative creativity still creates a creativity loop in the group. So if you switch them then to being positive, they'll all come up with ideas from having torn your ideas apart. But it is about creating that safe space and about putting energy and excitement into it and saying, this isn't a side of desk when you pass the speech bubbles, right? Saying, because we all know you're not going to do anything if that's the case. It's a bit like saying, instead of a gym membership, just do a couple of press-ups every day. You'll be fine, right? What happens? Nobody does the press-ups, right? But if they go to the gym and have dedicated time and it's treated as special and it's an account, they will get fitter. So treat the same to your innovation. Don't leave it as put a post-it when you can be bothered. They're like, no, we're all going to do this together. We're going to have fun. I'm going to support you through it.
That's fantastic advice. We're definitely going to implement that, and we'll let you know how it goes, because it's close to my heart. Innovation. I always like to change things. Always like to try new things, and I get excited about it. And I
love that. So let's talk offline. Yeah. I'll give you some techniques on how to do it. But fundamentally, at the core is, for all your listeners, look up brainstorming as opposed to brainstorming. Right? Do not rely on 1 or 2 people in a room to be the creators. Leverage everybody, and you can do that best through a technique called brainstorm.
Fantastic. Well, really enjoyed today. We've really gone deep on and I think there's some real value in there for all business owners, all people that are in teams. So many takeaways as well. We'll also put in the show notes some of the information that we've discussed today. But just before we go, Faris, could you just tell us a little bit more about where people can find you online?
Yeah, I think the 2 best places to find me online is come and visit the company website, Shiageto.com. We'll put how to spell it. I know it can confuse a few people. Not only will you get to read some of the fascinating case studies that we worked on, you'll get some top tips on how you can be more effective, and you can take our assessment of your current effectiveness and strategic success at the moment. And the other place is LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn a bit too much, as my family tell me. But I'm there every day. I post little nuggets every day and I reply to every message. So come and find Faris Aranki.